When you talk about the story of the Chicago Bulls, this is perhaps the first thing that comes to mind. How can a team create what is truly the world's greatest legend and then lose it with its own hands? This franchise with Michael Jordan practically turned basketball into a global phenomenon. It won 6 championships and has never lost a single NBA Finals game in its history. But of course, this team didn't reach its current state in just one season. We need to talk about bold decisions spanning decades, along with ruthless choices and some broken hearts. Now, we'll count down the 10 critical moments that officially changed the Chicago Bulls' history forever, starting from number 10 and working our way back. And believe me, number 1 will likely spark quite a bit of debate. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to the channel because you'll find more content like this here when the NBA season starts. I'll kick things off with number 10. Number 10, a city's official third chance. 60 years ago in 1966, Chicago had previously hosted an NBA team twice and lost out on it both times. The Stags were gone, the Zephyrs were gone, and so the city had essentially turned its back on professional basketball. Then a man named Dick Klein officially stepped in. He named the team the Bulls. He thought it was a short, tough name that suited the city's long-standing meatpacking industry. No one really expected much from an expansion team. However, coach Johnny "Red" Kerr managed to lead the Bulls to a 33-48 record in their first season. As a result, they made the playoffs outright. I'd say that was the best start any expansion team had ever had up to that point. Kerr was named NBA Coach of the Year that year, and the Bulls were practically carving out their place in history as the only expansion team to make the playoffs in their first season. If you're wondering why this is important, because this was Chicago's third attempt at professional basketball. In other words, this city might never have trusted professional basketball again. Number 9, heads or tails and the Lost Kingdom. By the late 1970s, the situation in Chicago was practically a wasteland. The Wirtz family had taken over the team but was keeping a very tight grip on the purse strings. The stands were, of course, emptying out. Sometimes there were only a few thousand fans left in the arena. As a result, the franchise was effectively fading away under the ownership of a family that had grown weary of running it, and the fear of the team moving out of the city had become a constant topic of conversation every season. In 1979, however, fate dealt the Bulls a cruel blow. The league would determine the number 1 draft pick by flipping a coin. And on April 19th, Commissioner Larry O'Brien tossed the coin. General Manager Rod Thorne had said heads, and they had even officially chosen this option through a fan vote, but the coin landed on tails. In Thorne's own words, "I said heads, it came up tails." With that number 1 pick, Los Angeles selected Magic Johnson. The Bulls, meanwhile, selected David Greenwood with the 2nd pick. A coin spinning in the air had, in a sense, stolen from Chicago, but the darkness had also brought a savior. On March 11th, 1985, a group led by Jerry Reinsdorf purchased the team for $16 million and appointed Jerry Krause as general manager. That team, valued at $16 million that day, is now officially worth billions of dollars. If that sale hadn't happened, perhaps there wouldn't even be a Chicago team today. Number 8, saying goodbye to a star. 9 years ago, on June 23rd, 2017, draft night, Jimmy Butler had transformed from an ordinary player selected late in the first round into a 3-time All-Star who left his mark on the league. Chicago had nurtured him, and then they let him go. The Bulls sent Butler and the 16th overall pick to Minnesota. In return, they acquired the 7th overall pick, which would eventually become Zach LaVine, Chris Dunn, and Lauri Markkanen. Immediately afterward, general manager John Paxson spoke plainly that night. We set a direction tonight. We're going to do this with young players. This marked the official beginning of what the franchise called a rebuild, a long and painful period. But that rebuild never truly reached its peak. If you ask about the outcome, by 2026, the Bulls had hit rock bottom again. They finished the season 31-51. Coach Billy Donovan stepped down. The front office was fired, and the roster was torn apart at the trade deadline. The Butler trade was the turning point that transformed Chicago from a championship contender into a team stuck in the middle of the pack for years. Unfortunately, the reality is that this franchise hasn't won a single playoff series since 2015. Number 7, the 1.7% miracle. It's worth noting that after Jordan left, Chicago was plunged into darkness. Then on May 20th, 2008, a lottery ball changed everything. After a dismal 33-49 season, the Bulls had only a 1.7% chance of landing the number 1 pick. It was nearly impossible, and they won, the second biggest upset in lottery history, behind Orlando's 1.5% win in 1993. The player they selected was Chicago's own, his name Derrick Rose, a local hero who grew up in Englewood and shone at Simeon High School. Rose was named Rookie of the Year, and in 2010-11, at just 22 years old, he became the youngest, most valuable player in NBA history. As a result, the Bulls were the league's best team with a 62-20 record. For the first time since Jordan, the United Center was believing in a championship again. Rose wasn't just a star, he was the heartbeat of a city. It was precisely that shot that brought the franchise back from the brink of extinction. Number 6, a leap, a dream shattered. Exactly 124 years ago, April 28, 2012, first round of the playoffs against Philadelphia. The Bulls were up by 12 points with just a few seconds left in the game. Rose leaped toward the basket and landed. No one touched him, but the anterior cruciate ligament in his left knee snapped. The arena instantly fell silent as a grave. Regarding this incident, in the NBA's own words, in the final minutes of a victory, Rose lost the rest of the playoffs due to a torn left ACL. That jump ended not just a season, but an era. Rose missed the entire 2012-13 season and never fully regained his explosive athleticism. Chicago's championship window closed before it had even opened. Just picture it, with a healthy Rose, Tom Thibodeau's Warrior Bulls might have even beaten LeBron's Miami. That injury is one of the biggest what-if questions in modern NBA history. A collapsed knee brought down a franchise's fate as well. Number 5, draft night. As many of you know, Jordan arrived in 1984, but he couldn't even make it past the first round on his own. Krause knew he needed a partner. On draft night in 1987, he found that partner, but it wasn't easy. An athlete with incredibly long arms from a small school, Central Arkansas, Scottie Pippen. Seattle selected him with the 5th pick, but Krause had already made a deal. Afterward, the Bulls traded Olden Polynice, whom they'd selected with the 8th pick, and acquired Pippen. On top of that, they snagged Horace Grant with the 10th pick. In a single night, Krause assembled 2 key pieces of the engine that would power a dynasty. Of course, Pippen went on to become one of the greatest second-in-command players in history, a defensive beast, selected for the all-defensive team 10 times. Pippen couldn't have emerged without Jordan, but without Pippen, those 6 championships would never have come. Number 4, the quiet genius and the triangle. In 1989, Doug Collins had brought the Bulls close to the top of the East. However, they just couldn't seem to get past that wall known as the Detroit Pistons' Bad Boys. In response, management made a bold and equally controversial decision. They fired Collins and quietly brought in a philosophical assistant coach to replace him, Phil Jackson. Jackson had integrated Tex Winter's triangle offense into the team. Now, the burden wasn't all on Jordan's shoulders. The ball was being shared more. And in 1991, the Bulls virtually swept the Pistons in the conference finals. The Detroit players left the court without even shaking hands. Following that, they managed to win their first championship with a 4-1 series victory over Magic Johnson's Lakers in the finals. Then came the second and third titles. The first three-peat was thus born. So if it weren't for Jackson, who knows, perhaps Jordan would have remained one of those legends who couldn't turn his talent into championships. Thus, we witnessed the convergence of the right coach, the right system, and the perfect timing. Number 3, 2 words from the fax machine. By October 1993, right in the middle of the season and immediately after winning his third championship, Jordan officially broke the news he was retiring. His father, James, had been brutally murdered that summer, and Michael's motivation for the game had run dry. He went to play baseball wearing the Birmingham Barons uniform. The league was virtually deprived of its biggest star. Then, on March 18, 1995, a fax arrived. It contained just 2 words: "I'm back." He was back, but the real magic came afterward. The Bulls brought in Dennis Rodman from San Antonio. With his colorful hair, he was quite uncontrollable, yet he was the league's best rebounder. And in 1995 to 96, Chicago went 72-10. I'm talking about the best season in history up to that point. They then defeated Seattle in the finals, thus kicking off their second three-peat, a retirement, a comeback, and a record. This trio had transformed the Bulls from a mere team into a global cultural phenomenon. Number 2, the last dance and the fall of an empire. It was 1998. The Bulls had just won their 6th championship. Jordan had made that unforgettable final shot against the Utah Jazz. Logic dictated that this team should continue, but ego, money, and pride had other ideas. Moreover, the feud between general manager Jerry Krause and coach Phil Jackson had become unbearable. Krause's famous line hung in the air: "Championships are won by organizations." Jackson left. Of course, Jordan said he wouldn't play without Jackson and retired for the 2nd time. Pippen was traded. Rodman was released. In a single offseason, the greatest dynasty in league history was deliberately torn apart. The following season, the Bulls went 13-37. And here's the harshest reality: the Chicago Bulls have never made it to the NBA Finals again since 1998. This event cast a shadow over the next quarter century. Number 1, the fate of the 3rd pick. And yes, we've arrived at the number 1 pick. Here's perhaps the critical moment when it all began. I'm talking about June 19th, 1984. Back then, the focus was on towering centers. Houston had managed to draft Hakeem Olajuwon with the number 1 pick. Portland, meanwhile, selected Sam Bowie with the number 2 pick, one of the most controversial mistakes in history. With the number 3 pick, the Chicago Bulls selected a guard from North Carolina, Michael Jordan. No one knew what would happen that day. A reporter had already labeled him the kid joining a losing team. But in his rookie season, Jordan began filling empty arenas to capacity with 28.2 points per game. He took the Bulls from a 27-55 record to 38-44 and was named Rookie of the Year. That single draft pick gave rise to 6 championships, 2 three-peats, a 72-10 season, and one of the world's most valuable sports brands. That's exactly why this is number 1. Some might object, citing the Pippen trade or the decision to hire Jackson, but here's the reality. The heart of this franchise began to beat for the first time on June 19th, 1984, with a player selected 3rd overall. After everything I've said, I can state this franchise isn't just about championships and, of course, stars. Magic lost in a coin toss, Pippen acquired in a trade, and who knows, perhaps an empire dismantled by ego. Just as much as the victories, the losses, missed opportunities, and rebirths have all shaped this team's identity. Now, I'd like to leave the floor to you. Which one do you think should have had the greatest impact? Be sure to post your own ranking in the comments. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe, because this channel will keep bringing you content you'll love even after the NBA season starts. See you in the next video.